She hadn't taken food in 9 days when I started carrying the mash inside the pen, instead of leaving it at the rail the way the handbook said to. Old dragons that stop eating are meant to be left alone to make their choice. I have read that line in the welfare manual 100 times. I was 63 years old. I had buried a wife and a working life, and I had no patience left for a book that told a grieving thing when to die. Her name on the intake board was a number. The men who delivered her 3 winters back called her a derelict, a blind old slatendrust dragon, both eyes clouded to milk, one wing crooked from a brake that had set wrong a long time ago. She'd come off a hauler that found her grounded on the salt flats, refusing to move, refusing to eat, after whatever she had lost was already gone. They brought her to Calder's Field because Calder's Field is where the unwanted ones come, and because no one pays to keep a thing that won't get up. I sat in the straw beside her that first night with the bucket between my knees and talked to her the way I used to talk to my wife in the last months, when she had stopped answering and I kept on anyway. I dipped 2 fingers in the warm mash and held them under that great blind head until I felt the slow rasp of her breath turn toward my hand. She didn't eat, but she didn't pull away either. That was the whole of it the first night. A blind dragon, an old man, and a bucket going cold between us. I have done bigger things in my life, and I can't remember a single one of them now. She ate on the 4th night. Not because I had a trick, I had no trick. I only kept coming. I kept the mash warm against my own chest on the long walk out across the field so it wouldn't go cold before she found it, and I learned the smell that meant she was willing, and the smell that meant leave it for now. By the turn of the season she would lift her head when my boots hit the gravel, those milk-white eyes swinging to find a man she couldn't see. I gave her a name because a number is no name for anything that grieves. I called her Vey after no one. It was just a sound she seemed to lean toward. There were others in the field that winter, a deaf old hauler with a torn ear, a 3-legged green one that had pulled freight for 40 years, and I tended all of them. But it was Vey I sat with past the end of my round. The field ran on grant money and good weather, and that winter we had neither. Word came down that Calder's Field was to close in the spring. The stock would be dispersed, sold where they could be sold, and the ones the order called non-recoverable, the blind, the broken-winged, the ones no buyer would feed, were to be put down humanely before the gates were chained. Vey was first on the list. Of course she was. I didn't argue it in the office. I'm not a man who wins arguments. I went back out to the pen and kept her eating, because that was the one thing in front of me I knew how to do. If she had 3 weeks left, I wasn't going to let one of them be hungry. Then the dispersal officer moved her date up. A blind grounded dragon eating nothing was a clean line on a ledger, he said, and there was no sense feeding a decision already made. So I did the only thing I had. I logged her intake every morning, willing, eating, gaining, because the order couldn't touch a recovering animal mid-assessment, and I made her recovering 1 warm bucket at a time. I bought her days the way a poor man buys anything, slowly and at cost. The feed came out of my own pocket by then. The field's accounts were frozen against the closing, and a recovering animal eats far more than a written-off one. I didn't mind the money. What I minded, and what I carry still, was the morning I came out and found her waiting at the rail, up on her feet. That crooked wing held a little out from her body for balance, her blind head already swung to the gate before I'd made a sound. 3 winters she had lain down in that straw. Now she stood to meet a man she had never once seen. I have been thanked in plain words my whole life, and meant less by all of them together. It was Vey who changed first. She'd spent 3 winters with her great head low and her crooked wing folded like a thing ashamed of itself. Then, on the cold nights near the end, she began to sing. I don't have a better word for it. A low sound came up out of her chest that I felt in the floor of the pen before I ever heard it, a sound with no bottom to it, and she aimed it north, at the open dark over the salt flats. It cost her. She'd sing until she shook and then lie spent in the straw, and I'd warm the mash and wait. She did it 3 nights running. I thought it was grief. I sat with her through all three and never once tried to make her stop. On the fourth morning, the sky over the north fence was wrong. I have been around working dragons my whole life, the haulers, the field teams, the broken old ones that came to us at the end. I had never seen anything like what came down out of that white winter sky. It came in slow and enormous and gold, a dragon the color of a wheat field under full sun, wings that dropped the whole pen into shade as it passed over. Behind it came two more, dark and silent, that circled and did not land. The gold one sat down in the field beyond the fence, folded its wings, and turned its head toward the pen, and the ground felt smaller for it being there. I stood in the gate with the mash bucket still in my hand, because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. A man came up the road an hour behind them, on foot and out of breath, in the gray coat of the high Karn, the old dragon lines of the eastern reach, the ones men like me only ever heard about and half believed. He told me what I had already started to understand. The gold dragon in my field was Vei's daughter. The high Karn had searched the Salt Coast 9 years for an old matriarch who had walked out into the flats to grieve a lost mate and never come home. They had counted her among the dead. They had sung her gone. And the whole of those 9 years she had been here, in a closing field at the tail end of a grant, eating warm mash off an old man's hand because he couldn't stand to let her go hungry. I brought the daughter to her myself. I walked that gold giant in through the gate, and it lowered its head to come under the lintel, that great wheat gold head dropping low and slow, and I felt how careful a thing that size can be when it chooses to be. Vei lifted her blind face toward the sound. The two of them touched, brow to brow, and the noise that passed between them was the one I'd taken for grief, except now I understood I had only ever been hearing one half of it. The daughter stayed. They didn't chain the gates that spring. The high Karn set its name on Calder's field, and a place the eastern reach puts its name to does not get closed by a man with a ledger. But that's the small part, the paper part, and it isn't what I keep. The man in the gray coat asked me before he left what title I wanted for it. The lines have titles for these things, he said. Keeper, warden, words that carry weight where he came from. I told him I was a man who'd fed an old dragon, and that was the whole of it, and he could write down whatever he liked. Then I went back to the pen. The gold daughter was lying in the straw with her broken-winged mother tucked in against her side, and Vei had her blind head turned toward the door, toward the sound of my boots on the gravel, the way she always did. I warmed the mash against my chest on the walk out, same as ever, so it wouldn't go cold before she found it. She isn't hungry now, and she isn't alone, and somewhere there is a great gold thing in the world that knows my footsteps, because her mother lay in a field for 3 winters and taught it to listen for them. That's enough. I have done bigger things. I can't remember one.